I'd say probably 20% of the world in any given group is getting better right now, right? And probably 40% is getting worse, and probably 40% is status quo, so which do you want to be? Do you want to be the 20, the 40, or the 40, because it fundamentally is up to you one way or the other.
Warren Buffett famously said that investing is like having a punch card with 20 slots on it. What you say yes to is put into a new light when you see that you only have a few shots at it. So you need to make them count. Hi, my name is Andre Chandra, founder and CEO of Propelo Media. Leaders rise up in challenging times. In today's Ask an Expert series, I'm visited by Adam Dailey, a serial entrepreneur, author, and former professional athlete from San Diego. His businesses mostly revolve around real estate and hospitality industry, which has been one of the hardest hit recently. Listen to our conversation around how saying no these days is harder than ever, but is ultimately worthwhile. We also talk about his book, about globetrotting around the world with 4 small children, and the mindset of an athlete entrepreneur.
Adam Dailey, thank you for joining us on the show today. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me here.
All right. Well, can you tell the audience who you are and what you do?
Yeah, my name is Adam. I'm involved in a lot of different things. I like to say that revolve around hospitality. I bring groups to the Olympic Games, to the World Cup, and I've just finished up renovating a boutique hotel down here in San Diego, and run companies that are trying to do kind of arbitrage in hospitality and Airbnb and group stays and things like that. So I like to say it's centered around hospitality, but it's kind of a little bit of everything. I like showing people a good time.
Got it. Yeah. Well, right now it must be quite tough. Can you share how this pandemic has impacted you personally and probably business wise?
Yeah, I mean, it's 2 kind of different answers. I think fundamentally, like business wise, all of our businesses for the most part kind of shut down. I mean, some of them physically shut down. And some of them just the revenue went from X to 10% of X, and so it's been pretty tough from a financial standpoint, just having kind of all those income streams stop, and especially in this way, how it hadn't happened so suddenly, and so there's so many ways that I thought we were kind of foolproof against something like that happening. Mm-hmm. But personally, I think as entrepreneurs, we're tied to our businesses fundamentally. So it's hard to not, if you're in a funk as a business person with your business, it's hard not to bring that home. That being said, it's been, I have 5 little kids running around the house, and it's been, we've tried to take advantage of the time together, and it's been hard at times, but it's been a really special time, I think, for our family. And as long as this is the last quarantine, I think we'll look at it, positively for a long time. Right.
Now, earlier before we actually started recording, I asked you what's the biggest decisions you made since the outbreak, and you mentioned that there's a deal that you had to, or a contract that you had to walk away from because it just didn't feel right. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, so for one of our properties, we had a deal that looked really good, and we'd spent tens of thousands of dollars on legal, getting this the way we wanted. We had a signed contract, and at the end of the day, they were, basically trying to weasel out of the contract. And the way they were acting, I was just like, man, this isn't. I could have forced them and held their feet to the fire, and made more money, or I could have sued them or something. I could have taken a stronger action, but I was like, these are not people I want to be, in business with. And even though it's hard to make a decision that, probably affects income directly, because again, they're contractually held to take over. Right. I just knew, I'm like, my happiness trumps that, and I want to work with people that respect me and like me and that I feel the same way about.
Right, right. Well, it reminds me of that famous Warren Buffett quote. He said that treat your big financial decisions as if you have a punch card with only 20 slots on it. So it's what you say no to is the one that's more important. And by default, you'll have many more no's than the yeses. Was walking away more of a gut feel instinct, or do you have a systematic process that you can share with our audience?
I mean, it's kind of one of those things. I think Gladwell talked about it in Blank, where it's like your first reaction is usually your best. And I think I definitely I analyze stuff a lot, and I kind of weigh out the good and the bad and the different options. I thought I had a bit better of a safety net than I actually did on that particular decision, but I always came back to what's it look like with this potential partner? Like what is the future going to look like 6 months from now, a year from now? And if you're, again, I feel like if you're already, it's like when the couple cheats on each other the night before the marriage, and then they both like wake up the next morning, oh, that was just, we got it out of our systems, we're okay, let's get married. It's like, are you okay? Is that really, I mean, is that the foundation you want to build your marriage on? And so I felt like that. I'm like, this isn't a partner I want to be with. This isn't someone I want to be married to. Whether it's 6 months or 10 years from now. And again, I find myself to be someone who's relatively easy to get along with in business because I'm transparent, because I do what I say I'm going to do, and
Right.
that so for me to have a lot of conflict is some red flags.
Right, right. Now, let's talk about post-COVID comeback strategies. Uh, as of the time of this taping, San Diego actually has started to reopen. What signals are you looking for, and is it local, or are you looking for, kind of nationwide trends or global signals?
Yeah,
Um,
I think
yeah,
we're looking for a little of everything. And I mean, I think there's a couple components. One is like the business I have right now in these properties and in the hospitality industry, and one is the future of business, right? Where the opportunities are. And I think they're kind of two different conversations of like, what's the hospitality like? For one part of me is like, okay, I need to ensure that I can try and make enough money to feed my family and pay mortgages, right? And it's like, what's that look like in the next 60 to 120 days? What does the rest of 2020 look like? And then when you start thinking about, okay, after 2020, how are we going to have to redo our business plans and whatnot? But also, where is the opportunity? So for me specifically, looking at hotels and Airbnbs and different projects, we're doing a 12-unit place in right outside of downtown San Diego that we don't know what the market will look like when we're actually done with the work that we're doing there. And so for us, it's also we think it's that the market is going to be shrunk a lot by people not traveling, not going out of their house, by changing their attitudes about traveling as well. But we think that the number of operators will hopefully be minimized as well. So if you have,
right,
let's say, 10,000 Airbnb properties in San Diego, or 1,000, and let's just say 1,000 for an easier number, and you have 400 of those operators go away, right? You have 400 houses. Someone had their second house. They're like, this is too rich for me, right? I'm going to rent long term now, or they lose the house, or whatever it is. So now you have 600, right? So whoa, in a way, you're like, wow, that's great in terms of supply demand. That being
right.
said, I think the demand will go down that more or less the same amount. So I think I think the markets are going to be okay. But again, this thing is so gnarly and like the unprecedented that it's hard to know. Like I said, I got caught for sure off guard because there was never anything I could conceive that would restrict travel, or
Well,
restrict, people,
for
doing
sure.
things they like doing.
Personally, you also had led a very adventurous, very interesting life. You wrote this book called How to Run Away from Home and Bring Your Family with You. Now, this is really, really intriguing because my wife and I have toyed with the idea of what you described in the book. But our biggest hang up is, our kids. How about school? How about education? Um, Probably, can you share with our audience kind of the overall theme of the book and how you actually pulled it off.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the idea behind the trip that I had was I just wasn't at a good place in my life in a lot of ways. Even though I was making money and I was running a successful company, it was, I just wasn't. It wasn't adding up. Every day wasn't the way I wanted it to be, and I didn't feel good. And I was, and I was like I said, I was making good money, and then I thought, well, all this money I'm making, like what this isn't how I want to choose to spend it, to hire a nanny and to have these 2 cars and to have a private school that we're paying for, and just it was all the money was gone, right? And I was like, if you gave me whatever that number was, $10,000 or $15,000 every month at the beginning of the month and said, what do you want to spend it doing? This would not be the path I would choose. I would travel or go around the world or something. And then it kind of clicked of like, I've got millions of miles and I don't know what my next move is, but at least maybe I can get an experience out of it and go travel around the world with my family. I think, as you point out, as soon as that thought kind of crosses your mind, there's a million, this is why you can't do it, thoughts that enter your mind. And it's a very impractical thing to do in this day and age. But for us, it was also like, if not now, when? That was kind of the argument over and over. And for us, it was also not just about the kids. Like, it's like, there's always more optimal times for kids, but then if you go, you want them to have memories of it, but also if you wait too long, they have their friends and they have their sports and whatnot.
Right.
So it's like, at some point you just have to draw a line in the sand and say, look, we're going, this is what we're doing.
Right.
And so that was kind of our motivation behind it, was we needed a break. We didn't know exactly what the break meant, and we didn't know exactly what it would look like coming out of that either. But we figured, hey, we can go live our lifestyle for less than our normal life cost, and go be in Thailand and Australia and Spain and go show the kids something that they'll never forget.
Right. That sounds awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think you hit it right on the head right there. At every stage of life, there's always pluses and minuses.
Yeah.
Now, by the way, which country would you say was the most kid and family friendly?
That's a good question. I mean, we were traveling 4 little kids at the time, so it's like nowhere's that family friendly. I mean, everywhere we go, they would look at us and be like, "Oh my God, like, look at this family." Like, it's like walking down the aisle of an airplane, they'd be like counting 1, 2, 3, 4, So that being said, I mean, I think in Italy we were pretty well received. In Greece we were pretty well received. We loved being in Australia just because the people are nice and there's just tons of space and outdoors and there's all these kinds of activities. And in New Zealand, it was kind of the same thing. In New Zealand, had these monster like playgrounds just on the side of the highway. You'd pull over and they'd have 100-foot zip lines and these crazy like playgrounds that were just awesome. So I mean, everywhere kind of had its ups and downs, in terms of that trip and in terms of what the kids remembered, in terms of what we felt like was important. For us, we also had 4 kind of places where we spent a month or more during that year of travel. We had 4 different locations where we were like, unpack the bags, rent a place for a month or 5 weeks or 6 weeks or whatever. But those turned out to be some of our best, like probably our 4th favorite places when you really think about it.
Right, so you can enjoy and immerse yourself and not having to run from place to place.
Absolutely.
Well, that sounds like a great life to lead. I should definitely look into that again.
Yeah. No, it's like I said, there's a lot of reasons to say you can't do it. You know what I mean? There's a lot of things, logical reasons that say this isn't a good time. Wait, this will be better. But for us, it was also like there's a short term. You got to kind of. I have one friend who talked about doing it, 3.5 years from now or whatever. He had a long term, and I was just like, you're never going to do it if it's that far ahead, So it's also just important to just pick a date, in the next 12 months or something like that, and make it happen.
Yeah. Now, so the last question I have is, you're also very athletic. You mentioned that you ran in the Olympic trials. This is something that I've been meaning to ask, athletes. I've often heard that discipline and this mind over matter toughness that athletes develop translates really well into entrepreneurship. Is this true? What do you think of that? And if not, what qualities do you think overlap well between these two?
I mean, I think visualization is important. I
Ah,
think
yeah.
discipline is really important. For sure, the discipline of what athletes go through, and and being able to sacrifice, in terms of time, and in terms of in college, I can think of a lot of times where I saw people having the college experience, and I'm like, I have to go do a workout this afternoon, or they're going partying one night, and I'm like, I have a workout in the morning, or I'm flying to Philadelphia for a race or whatever. It's a different experience. I also think competitiveness, being a competitor is a really big thing that, my parents identified early on. I liked beating other people. I liked competing against other people.
Mm,
So naturally, athletics was something I was, drawn to. And in the same way, we're all, competitive with our businesses. And it's like, it's as much as we like to say, oh, we don't care about it, we're competing against ourselves, or we don't care. I think there's a big thing of being a competitive person, whether, even if it is with yourself, but we still want to win, right? Whatever that means. And for some of us, that means beating competition. For some of that means beating ourselves. For some of it means hitting goals, which I guess is probably another huge component when I talk about visualization, is just thinking about goals. As I used to think about when I was an athlete, I would sit there in class and daydream and write down the times I wanted
right,
to run, and
right.
write down the splits, and then, fast forward 10 or 15 years later, and I'd be daydreaming about my business and how I wanted to hit a certain revenue number, how I wanted to be featured in magazines or whatever. And it's that same, I think, visualization that carries across both platforms.
Got it. Got it. All right. Well, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our audience, Adam, that I forgot to ask?
No, I think you're doing a great job of kind of giving this inspiration to different people and different entrepreneurs. I think it's an interesting time right now specifically, and I have that conversation a lot with my kids. Is I'd say probably 20% of the world in any given group is getting better right now,
Hmm.
right? And probably 40% is getting worse, and probably 40% is status quo. So I see girls on my kids' soccer team who aren't practicing at all, right? And they're getting worse, and I see my son out in the back, and he plays a little bit. He's probably about the same. And then I see my daughter who's joined a new team. She's on a Zoom call every day from 4 to 5, and she's getting so much better from this Zoom call every day. And she's in that 20%, and it's not just athletics; it's everything, I think, right now. So it's like I keep talking to my kids about, like, which do you want to be? Do you want to be the 20, the 40, or the 40? Because it fundamentally is up to you, one way or the other.
Right, right. Well, that's an excellent principle, and what better timing to teach these values to our children? Yeah. Well, Adam, thank you so much
Thank you.
for your time. Thank you
For
for
sure.
sharing.
Yeah.
I want to wish you the best of luck. Again, like we talked about in the very beginning, I think things have started reopening. So I wish you Godspeed in terms of just getting back to normal, whatever that new normal is.
Yeah. Thank you. You too.
All right. Well,
All
thank
right.
you.